There's a moment when someone starts losing interest in you, and the most dangerous thing about that moment is that it doesn't look like a moment at all. It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't break things. It doesn't force you to face it. It comes quietly, almost invisibly, hidden inside small changes that are easy to ignore if you're not paying attention. And that's exactly why most people miss it. Because nothing dramatic happens. There's no argument, no sudden silence, no clear goodbye that signals the end of something. Everything still seems normal on the surface. They still respond. They still exist in your life. They still talk to you. But something feels different, and you can't explain it. You try to pinpoint what changed, but there's nothing obvious. No single moment you can go back to and say, this is where everything shifted. It's just a feeling, a quiet discomfort, a subtle distance that didn't exist before. And at first, you brush it off. You tell yourself you're overthinking. You convince yourself that they're just busy, distracted, dealing with something in their own life, because the alternative is too uncomfortable to accept. The alternative means admitting that something between you is no longer the same, and that thought, it scares you. So you ignore the signs. You silence that voice in your head that keeps whispering that something isn't right. But the more you ignore it, the more it lingers, because deep down, you can feel it. Not clearly, not logically, but emotionally. You feel the shift in energy. You feel the change in presence. You feel the difference in how they show up. And even if you don't want to admit it, your mind starts collecting evidence. The replies take longer now. The conversations feel shorter. There's less curiosity, less engagement, less effort. And yet, it's still not enough to convince you, because people don't leave all at once. They don't disappear overnight. They leave slowly, in pieces, in small, almost unnoticeable ways. And that's what makes it so painful. Because by the time you finally see it clearly, by the time everything starts to make sense, they're already gone emotionally. The connection that once felt strong and natural now feels fragile and forced. The energy that once flowed effortlessly now feels heavy and uneven. And the hardest part isn't just that they're changing. The hardest part is realizing that you stayed while everything was already slipping away. It always begins in a way that makes you doubt yourself more than the situation. Because nothing is clear enough for you to confront, but it's also not normal enough for you to ignore completely. It's this middle ground that traps you. This space where you're not sure if you're exaggerating or finally seeing the truth. And that messes with your head. Because before, everything was simple, natural, fluid. You didn't need to think twice before sending a message. You wouldn't analyze every response. You didn't need to wonder if it was still important. You simply felt it. And now, you overthink. You realize you started a conversation rereading it, analyzing response times, noticing details that previously went unnoticed, not because you want to, but because something inside you is trying to understand what's happening. And the more you observe, the more you notice small changes. It's not that a person stopped completely, it's that they slowed down. They slowed down their interest. They slowed down their presence. They slowed down their effort. And this less starts to weigh on you, because you remember exactly how it was before. You remember the intensity, the attention, the way everything seemed to happen naturally. And this comparison starts to hurt you, because now nothing seems spontaneous. It seems like everything requires effort, and almost always, the effort comes only from you, and that's where the most dangerous doubt of all is born. Is the problem me? Because when someone changes towards you, it's inevitable to look inward. You start to question yourself. If you said something wrong, if you did something wrong, if you stopped being interesting, and even without proof, you blame yourself, because it's easier to believe that you did something wrong than to accept that the person is simply losing interest. And while you try to find answers, you start acting differently. You try to compensate. You try to bring back what existed before. You send more messages. You bring up more topics. You try to keep the connection alive on your own. Because deep down, you believe that if you try hard enough, everything can go back to normal. But what you haven't realized yet is that when someone starts to drift away, your effort doesn't bring them closer. It only makes it more evident how much the other person is no longer in the same place as you. And that's when the confusion becomes something you can't escape anymore. Because now it's not just a feeling, it's a pattern. You start seeing it happen over and over again. The same delays, the same lack of interest, the same conversations that feel incomplete. And yet, they're still there. That's what makes it so hard to process. If they had disappeared completely, you would have your answer. Painful, but clear. But this is different. This is someone staying without really being present, someone talking to you without truly engaging, someone existing in your life but no longer contributing to it the way they used to. And that creates a kind of emotional tension that's hard to explain, because you don't know if you're losing them or if you already lost them and just didn't realize yet. And your mind starts replaying everything, every message, every interaction, every small change, trying to find a moment where it all shifted, trying to understand what happened. But the truth is, there was no single moment. It didn't break. It faded, slowly, quietly. And what hurts the most isn't just the distance itself. It's the contrast. The difference between what it was and what it has become. Because you remember how easy it used to be, how natural it felt, how you didn't have to question anything. And now, you question everything. You question your place, your importance, your value in their life. And that doubt, it starts to change how you see yourself. You begin to feel like you're asking for too much. Even when all you're asking for is consistency, you start to feel like you're being too sensitive, even when you're just reacting to real changes. And instead of stepping back, you lean in even more. You try harder. You give more of yourself. Because part of you still believes that if you just do enough, you can bring things back to how they were. But what you don't realize yet is that you're trying to rebuild something that the other person is no. And the more you try, the more you start to feel something breaking inside you. Not all at once, not in a way that's loud or obvious, but in small emotional cracks that begin to spread. Because no matter how much effort you put in, something still feels missing. You start to notice that your energy isn't being matched anymore, that your presence isn't being valued the same way, that the connection you're trying to keep alive is slowly slipping through your hands. And that's when the exhaustion begins. Not physical exhaustion, but emotional, the kind that comes from constantly thinking, constantly analyzing, constantly trying to understand something that no one is explaining to you. You start overthinking everything. Every message becomes something to decode. Every delay becomes something to question. Every small change becomes something to worry about. And it drains you, because you're carrying something that used to feel light and now feels heavy. You're putting effort into something that no longer responds the same way. And deep down, you know this isn't how it's supposed to feel. A real connection doesn't make you question your place. It doesn't make you feel uncertain all the time. It doesn't make you feel like you have to fight for attention. But here you are, doing exactly that, fighting for something that used to be natural. And the hardest part is realizing that no matter how much you try, you can't control how someone feels. You can't force interest. You can't recreate effort on your own. And the more you try to hold on to it, the more you feel it slipping away, because some things aren't meant to be forced. And when you try to force them, they break even faster. And this is where something even more dangerous starts to happen. You begin to lie to yourself, not because you want to, but because it feels safer than facing the truth. Because admitting that someone is losing interest in you is painful. It forces you to confront something you were not ready to lose. So instead, you create explanations. You tell yourself they're just going through a phase, that life is overwhelming them, that they'll come back to how they used to be. And for a moment, those thoughts comfort you. They give you a reason to stay, a reason to keep trying. But that comfort never lasts, because reality keeps showing up in ways you can't ignore forever. It shows up in the lack of effort, in the way they no longer prioritize you, in the absence of the little things that once made you feel valued. And every time that happens, it creates a conflict inside you, because your heart wants to believe one thing, but your mind is starting to see another. And that tension, it wears you down. You start holding on to memories more than the present. You replay how things used to be, trying to convince yourself that version still exists. But the truth is, you're no longer experiencing what it was, you're remembering it. And that's what keeps you stuck. Because you're not just holding on to the person, you're holding on to the feeling they once gave you. And that makes it even harder to let go. You start giving more of yourself, thinking that maybe if you show enough care, enough patience, enough understanding, something will change. But what you don't realize is that love, connection, interest, they can't be forced back into existence. They either exist or they don't. And when they start fading, no amount of effort from one side can stop it. And the longer you stay in that space, the more you lose pieces of yourself trying to save something that's already slipping away. And without even realizing it, you begin to disappear inside the situation. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that anyone else would notice, but in quiet, subtle ways that slowly change who you are. You stop expressing what you really feel. because you're afraid of pushing them further away. You hold back your thoughts, your emotions, your needs, because you don't want to seem like too much. You start accepting things that, at another time in your life, you would never accept. Less attention, less effort, less presence, and somehow, you convince yourself that it's okay, that this is just how things are now. But deep down, it doesn't feel okay. It feels heavy. It feels confusing. It feels like you're constantly trying to maintain something that no longer sustains itself. And that imbalance starts to drain you. You give more, they give less. You try more, they respond less. And over time, that gap becomes impossible to ignore, because relationships, connections, anything meaningful, requires mutual energy. It requires two people showing up, and when only one person is trying to keep it alive, it stops being a connection. It becomes a struggle. And the most painful part is that you're aware of it. You feel it every time you hesitate before sending a message. You feel it every time you question if you're bothering them. You feel it every time you wait, hoping for the same energy you once received so easily. And still, you stay, because a part of you is still holding on to hope. Hope that they'll come back. Hope that things will return to how they were. But hope, when it's not grounded in reality, can keep you stuck in a place that's already empty. And then, there comes a moment where you can't ignore it anymore. Not because something big suddenly happened, not because there was a clear ending, but because all the small things you've been trying to overlook finally become too heavy to carry. It's like everything you felt before, but tried to silence, starts coming back all at once. You look at the way things are now, and you realize it's not the same. It hasn't been for a while. The conversations feel different. The energy feels distant. The connection feels weaker, less alive, less natural. And for the first time, instead of trying to fix it, instead of trying to bring it back to what it used to be, you just observe it. You sit with it. You allow yourself to see it without creating excuses. And that observation changes everything. Because now you're not reacting out of fear anymore. You're not trying to convince yourself that everything is fine. You're finally seeing things as they are. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. You begin to understand that this didn't happen overnight. It wasn't one message, one mistake, one situation that changed everything. It was a slow shift, a gradual emotional distance that built itself quietly while you were still trying to hold everything together. And that realization hits deeper than anything else, because it forces you to accept something you've been avoiding for a long time. They're not in the same place anymore. And maybe they haven't been for longer than you realized. And suddenly, everything starts to make sense. The mixed signals, the cold responses, the lack of effort, the feeling that you were the only one trying. It wasn't in your head. It was real all along. You just didn't want to see it, because seeing it means accepting that something important to you is no longer what it used to be, and that is never easy. And once you finally allow yourself to see it, something inside you begins to change. Not in a way that feels strong at first, but in a quiet, almost uncomfortable awareness. You stop fighting the reality that's been in front of you the whole time. You stop trying to reshape it into something it no longer is. And even though that hurts, it also brings clarity. Because for so long you were stuck between what you felt and what you wanted to believe. You were holding on to hope, even when the signs were showing you something different. But now, that illusion starts to fade. You begin to understand that it was never about one single moment that broke everything. It was the accumulation of small absences, less attention, less curiosity, less effort, small things that, over time, created a big distance. And the most painful part of that realization is understanding that while you were trying to keep everything together, they were already letting it fall apart. Not necessarily in a cruel or intentional way, but still, it happened. And now you're faced with a truth that's hard to accept but impossible to ignore. You can't force someone to feel the same way they once felt. You can't rebuild connection alone. You can't hold on to something that no longer holds on to you. And the longer you try, the more it drains you. Because staying in something that's fading doesn't preserve it. It only prolongs the pain of watching it disappear slowly. And this is where the shift finally turns inward. For so long, your focus was on them, on what changed, on what you could fix, on what you might have done wrong. But now, the questions start to come back to you. And they're not easy questions. They don't bring comfort at first. They challenge you. They make you stop and look at yourself in a way you've been avoiding. You start asking, why am I still trying so hard for someone who isn't doing the same? Why am I accepting something that makes me feel uncertain, anxious, and emotionally drained? Why am I holding onto a version of this connection that no longer exists in reality? And those questions begin to open your eyes. Because you realize that this was never just about them losing interest. It was also about you staying, even when you felt that something wasn't right. You stayed because you cared. You stayed because you believed in what it used to be. You stayed because letting go felt like losing something important. But now, you start to see it differently. You begin to understand that holding on isn't always strength. Sometimes, it's fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of accepting that something ended without a clear ending. And when you recognize that, something powerful happens. You begin to reclaim your awareness. You begin to see your own value again. You begin to understand that your worth was never supposed to depend on how much effort someone else gives you. And slowly, even though it hurts, you start to let go. And when you finally let go, something unexpected happens. The silence that once hurt you starts to feel peaceful. The confusion that once consumed your thoughts begins to disappear. And the constant need to understand what went wrong slowly fades away. Not because you got all the answers, but because you no longer need them. You start to realize that closure doesn't always come from the other person. Sometimes, it comes from your decision to stop holding on to something that no longer feels right. And that realization changes everything. Because for the first time in a long time, your energy is no longer tied to someone else's behavior. You're no longer waiting for messages that may never come. You're no longer trying to decode actions that don't match words. You're no longer losing yourself trying to keep something alive. Instead, you start coming back to yourself. You start noticing how much of your energy was being drained, how much of your peace was being affected, and how much of yourself you gave away trying to hold on to something that was already fading. And with that awareness comes a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't chase, the kind that understands that real connection doesn't require constant effort to exist. It just flows. And now, you know the difference. You know what it feels like when something is real and when something is slowly disappearing. So if you've been feeling that shift, that distance, that quiet change you couldn't explain before, trust it, because ignoring it only delays what you already feel, and facing it is what sets you free. If this made you think, take a second to like this video, and if you want more content like this, subscribe to the channel. There's another video waiting for you right now, and you should watch it.